It,
Hello, all you cool cats and kittens. Tops and bottoms, switch, verse, whatever, poly, demisexual. If you're here and you're queer, I mean, be a communist instead, please. And yeah, stop identifying as oppressed because that's getting really tired, almost as tired as I am about like watching everybody talk about AOC without any actual class analysis. So we're going to get into that today with our internet boyfriend, Jackson Hinkle, who has been quite busy. He's been to jail. He's been to, I don't know, some official like building or something with steps on it that Democrats went to or some shit. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how pretty I am and how much I hate capitalism. And my dad, Eric, here is, I don't know, going to take his shirt off or something. So let's get to it. Jackson, hi, how are you? What have you been up to?
I'm doing very well. Just moved to Los Angeles this week, so I'm a bit tired from that, but just been causing chaos as per usual, setting off bombs on communist Twitter, and getting arrested.
Bombs. We support terrorism now.
and you're only and he's only 22, which is you just turned 22. So
yeah, that was a surprise.
That was a shocker. That was a shocker to me.
Yeah. And so I don't know. It was not too crazy of a week because of the moving, but maybe I'll be celebrating this weekend in some good communist fashion. I don't know. Maybe there's some protests we can go to or something like that. Mm-hmm. But we'll see.
Or we just start our own. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Or we just start our own.
There you go. Could do that.
But yeah, no. There's a lot of crazy shit happening this week. I think we should probably start with that horrible UN speech that Biden gave the other day. I don't know. I just Biden's speech just at the UN was a textbook example on how the Democratic Party functions as the representatives of the Eastern establishment, ultra-rich imperialist faction of our ruling elite. Biden framed U.S. imperialism in a very strategic humanitarian interventionist fashion, which obviously liberals prefer over Trump's brutal, matter-of-fact, scorched earth style. But that's the only difference between Biden and Trump and their respective parties, because the goal of U.S. imperialism is to destroy and curb any socialist or anti-imperialist country from getting in the way of U.S. hegemony. And Biden made it clear that the targets are the same, from China, DPRK, Vietnam, Syria, Yemen, Iran, etc. So, Jackson, what did you think of that speech?
The speech was, as I said right before we went live, like it was everything you could imagine it would be, but worse. He got up there, and one of the first things he said that blew my mind was he got up there and he said, this is the first time that I'm standing here that, a U.S. president has stood here in the past 20 years when the United States hasn't been at war. And I was like, what? He bombed Afghanistan. He bombed Somalia. He bombed Syria. He bombed Iraq, and he's killed civilians in probably all of those countries through those bombings. He's continuing to promise to bomb Syria and Afghanistan more in the future. And then, also just this week, the United States formed a new military pact with Australia and the UK called AUKUS, which is aiming to create a bloc that is going to strategically pin itself against China in this new Cold War. So it's like literally everything he said in that speech just goes against what he's done for the past almost year now. And I'm not surprised by it, but you'd think he'd be at least like a little bit honest. Maybe just say like we've limited the amount of war that we're engaging in. Something like that would be closer to the truth. But Can't even do that, and that's not even accurate either. But he can't even do that. He's just straight up lying and saying that this is the first time he's spoken, or any president spoken, in the past 20 years when the U.S. hasn't been at war. And to be honest, like, I don't even know how people like Joe Biden can enter the halls of the United Nations building and like not just get arrested and charged with war crimes there on the spot. Like, I don't know how that happens. It's pretty incredible.
Right. The same with like George Bush.
Also sanctions.
Yeah, and like George Bush, we've been seeing people like calling him out at like the liberal like establishment, and like the media have like now like adore him and don't call him out for his war crimes and how horrible he was, because he like says some bad things about Trump, so they like eat him up.
Oh yeah, liberals
like,
are all like, for a minute they were like, oh, we could have George Bush instead of Trump, and I was like, please fucking kill me, because I don't want to hear that from people who told me I had to vote for Joe Biden to save our world. Like, you just told me that we should miss George Bush. Okay. And also, to piggyback off of what you're saying about like being at war, like sanctions are war, and we've been increasing sanctions on Cuba, Syria, Venezuela. Every drop of the hat is a sanction, and Biden's like face is slipping off. So if liberals haven't caught on by now, I don't know what's going to save them. Like I'm praying for them, like truly, like I hope you get well, because you're ill. And I feel rude saying shit like that, but like I'm mad.
Truth.
I'm really mad about how we just have to accept these things. They just lie to us. We're not at war. Girl, we've been at war for a long time. Time. Why do you think they took down the Twin Towers? Okay, that because we've been at war so long in their country, and what we've been destabilizing Western Asia for decades.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come back to bite us in the ass eventually. And I'm not saying that any of those people deserved it. Like, what I'm saying is, like,
it's the same thing as like Pearl Harbor. It's like, what did you expect? You're poking and prodding to the point where, I mean, sure, I mean, you could objectively look at that and say that that's an overreaction, but it's also like, you knew something was going to happen. You wanted something to happen. You probably just didn't expect it to be like that. No one wants that to happen, but it's like something like that is bound to happen. And I like what you said too about sanctions, because sanctions are warfare as well. They cause, disproportionate negative impacts. They cause death and famine for the people of the countries that are being targeted. And we see that with Venezuela right now. Venezuela's economy is it's declined by 99% since the start of Western and U.S. sanctions on the country. And you see Joe Biden there again at the UN saying that we're not engaging in warfare, but that is clearly warfare against the Venezuelan people. And actually today, Nicolas Maduro spoke at the UN Assembly, and he was talking about the need for an end for global imperialism, an end for, these sanctions, murderous sanctions, and the need for multipolar peace and cooperation. So it's like, it's just funny that Joe Biden gets he gets celebrated rather in the international press as some like bastion of peace and hope for all that's good. Whereas people like Nicolas Maduro in the international press get treated as like villains and someone who can do nothing that would ever be considered right or peaceful, yet he's the one calling for peace.
Yeah, and then like Joe Biden was saying something like, we need to stop like all these tyrannical or oppressive like regimes from dominating the world. And it's like, what has the US been doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
look at where our navy is right now, literally in the South China Sea. Where do you think the South China Sea is? It's South China. That's not the United States. That's China. That's the South China Sea. Like, and this is and what you were saying about that pact that the US made with Australia and the UK is, it gives a lot of like power to these radlibs who, like the settlers crowd, you know, they're like, oh, it's a settler colony, and like, and it is, but this is, you know, this is the legacy of imperialism, and calling that shit out and supporting people and countries led by people like Nicolas Maduro, Bashar al-Assad, the Kim Jong-un, like these are the people fighting to end China. They're fighting to end, like, this is where we should show international solidarity. And the people want to make it about something that it's not, something we have no control over, which is like how much wages like bean farmers are making for Starbucks. Like figure out where you have leverage in your country, because I can't tell Starbucks how much money they have to pay international workers unless we control the government. So be a communist instead of a third world nationalist. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think the whole point of sanctions is to really curb and suffocate these socialist states, like Cuba, Venezuela, DPRK, from really reaching their highest potential, because if socialism does work, so they need, if people were to like look to these countries and see them just naturally be not impacted by any type of intervention by US hegemony or like imperialism, then people would start looking toward their own government and saying like, well, it clearly works over there, so why can't that work here? People would really wake up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Jackson.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's like, if you look at all the countries that we're targeting, the vast majority of them are countries that are performing very well for like quality of living, for literacy rates, for access to healthcare and stuff like that, and education. These are the countries that we're targeting and trying to cripple the economies of, and trying to replace the leaders that are doing good things with leaders that will be, selling out their people and their land and their resources to multinational corporations. Because exactly that, it's like we don't want, or the empire doesn't want our population to wake up to the fact that other countries are doing it better. They are able to provide for their people, and the way that they are doing that is through, socialist policies, through nationalizing of, major resources and reinvesting that into the people of their country. And it's a shame that like those types of policies are so vilified in the United States, but if you really look at it, despite all of the economic pressures that these countries are facing, they're still able to provide for their people. They're still able to circumvent the sanctions and the blockades and the legitimate warfare in some cases, and provide those basic necessities to their people.
Thanks,
that
China.
we can't provide here. It's incredible.
And it's almost like those policies are like, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it patriotic? Could that be it? Like, want to better the lives of their countrymen? Like, I don't know. I could be reaching, but tell me.
Sounds about right. To me. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I think all communists, it's inherent, if you're a communist, to be a patriot, and if you're a patriot, you should adhere to communist values and beliefs. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand. I don't know what you guys think, but
absolutely, that's something we say on this show all the time. We on our proletarian patriotism streams, we try to link and make the connection that being patriotic and being a socialist are interlinked, because if you look at like throughout history, every successful socialist revolution, they've used patriotism as a tool to unite the masses up against their class enemy, which are the ruling bourgeoisie of that respective country. And we can do that here. And people who say that no, that can't work in the United States, it's not allowed, is just, that's just bullshit. Like it just doesn't, it's just like ultra brain rot nonsense to think that, because there is a rich socialist history in the United States. There's been, it's, I mean, there's been plenty of examples of, you know, of the working class uniting along class lines. There's been a communist party here. They've, everything that we take for granted today is because of the communist party here in the United States. So to think that somehow that magically can't happen here, because I guess the United States has been the only settler colonial state in the world. It's never been in the, you know, Latin America or Cuba, you know, Cuba or, you know, in Russia or whatever. I guess, like, you know, like Russia was more of like an imperialist empire, but like, so is the United States. The United States is
Bolivia, Peru.
They were all settler colonial states too. So it's just mind-boggling, because, you know, you've taken some hits on that, because your tweet has made the people's, you know, the ultras brains explode a little bit.
Yeah, I think I didn't really think it was going to be controversial to say that. Like, I didn't even think anything was going to come of it. I just really do feel that way, that like I am a Marxist Leninist, I am an anti-imperialist, and I am a patriot, and all those things go together if you truly understand what they mean. And being a patriot does not mean that I mean, there's so much you could go into with it, but like, if you just look at the Declaration of Independence, there's like two fundamental ideas in it. And it's that, you know, we in the United States, we have the people, we have our countrymen, and we have the government, and the government is artificial. And if the government isn't serving the needs of its people, it's not guaranteeing life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, then it's the right of the people and the duty of the people to alter or abolish the government. So that's like exactly what you should be doing as a patriot. You know, if you think that the U.S. empire isn't serving the needs of the people, and you think it's waging an imperialist war, then the most patriotic thing to do would to be oppose that war and support the policies that are going to benefit, you know, your loved ones, your friends, and the workers of your country.
I agree. And then also, you know, people, you know, like to claim that the same group of people that claim that you can't be a patriot in the United States because it's reactionary, they don't really understand the difference between bourgeois nationalism versus proletarian patriotism or socialist patriotism. And the fact of the matter is like what, like we said before, it's a tool to unite the masses against the ruling bourgeoisie, and to form a government that works for the people, that fights for working families. And the only way to end imperialism and its impact on like the global South and Asia and wherever else is for the people in the United States to form a people's state, a worker state. And the only way to really have that happen is to have that uniting tool, which is patriotism. To get people to understand that to be a socialist is to not want to destroy your country, but is to save it from the imperialists who are actively destroying it. Because what they're doing overseas is what they're doing here at home. Like we have no infrastructure. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our people are living in a low-wage police state. It's an expanding surveillance state. People's illiteracy, people are becoming more illiterate. People are losing their life expectancy is going down, not up. The number one form of debt in the United States is medical debt. You can't find that anywhere else.
No.
So, you know, and people don't have clean drinking water. 40% of the homeless population have jobs. So please tell me how imperialism somehow benefits workers here. It doesn't. It's just destroying working families' lives here. So with that brings about endless amounts of revolutionary potential among the American working class. And the only way to unite people is to unite them around saving their country and fighting for each other's families, and not just people's families here, but also across the globe, because we all have the same interests.
Mm-hmm.
We want win-win cooperation. We don't want destruction.
Exactly. A good patriot should love workers all across the world. Like that, you should be a good patriot is someone who believes in win-win, mutually beneficial cooperation all across the world. And I like what you said also about imperialism is hurting workers in the United States right now, and poor people in the United States right now, and that's the truth. And Michael Parenti probably said it best in his super patriotism versus patriotism speech, when he explained, the United States is not the country of the imperialist class, of the economic media elite. It's the country of the people, and we have to be willing to take it back, and we have to be willing to fight for it and improve the country, or abolish the government and create something new if that's what we need to do. And I just 100% resonate with that. And I think I honestly believe anyone who is saying the stuff that, like, you hear ultras say stuff like, oh, like, if you're a patriot, that means you condone and, you support all of the shit that the US empire does on a daily basis. You're condoning that. It's like, no, that's not at all. I'm saying that doesn't represent this country, and they've hijacked what it means to be a patriot. That's not being patriotic. That's fucking over your fellow countrymen and fucking over people all across the world. So it's like, I really believe that there's been and it's also an erasure of history, right? Because being an American patriot means you support the deep history of U.S. progressivism. And so it's two things, right? If you hear ultras saying that, it's not only just a complete misunderstanding of what being a patriot is, but it's also engaging in an erasure of, like, U.S. progressive history, I think.
Yeah, and also, just I want to add one thing. It's patriotic to challenge your bourgeois government. It's patriotic to stand up to them and call them out against all the horrific things they're doing, not just abroad, but at home, to their own people in their home country. So, and that's just, we have numerous examples of American figures that have done that, and that's an example of patriotism. Like Fred Hampton, he is a patriot. Eugene Debs, patriot. William Z. Foster, patriot. Gus Hall, patriot. Helen Keller, patriot. You know what I mean? So, like, these people have called out, U.S. Imperialism, U.S. aggression toward other people and other countries. And that's what it means to be a patriot, because you care about your people here at home, and you also care about other workers and their families abroad. That's what it means to be a patriot.
Yeah. And I've heard some people also say, which might sound like a convincing argument, that, there's, when people of the past, when Marxists of the past, leftists of the past are calling themselves patriots, I've even heard this brought up about Parenti. It's like, they will argue that, well, it's about the time and place in the historical era in which someone is saying that. So, like, for someone to say that back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, that they're a patriot and can also be a communist, it doesn't necessarily mean that applies to today, when we live in this imperial nightmare that we live in. And it's like, again, this is truly an erasure of history. Like World War II, World War I were both imperialists. Look at Vietnam. Vietnam was imperialist. Like, you need to engage with the facts and understand that, like, being the United States being an imperial country is not something new to, like, the 21st century. It's
Right.
just not. And these patriots who were Marxist-Leninists have all reckoned with those facts in the past and still came to the same conclusion that we all come to today.
But yeah, no, Jackson, I think you're right. I think that there's erasure of the actual history of Marxist-Leninists being patriotic and how that still applies today, because it's like we've been saying, it's a uniting tool. It's a tool to unite the masses, and you can't really point to any successful socialist revolution that didn't use it. They've all used it.
I mean, nobody went. None of these communist revolutions ever worked where their like first chant was destroy this country. We hate this country. Like, I think we have been in this mindset of so long of just like hopelessness. Like we know we have no control over it, so we're just like, oh, I hate this country. I hate this country. I hate this government. And that's true. And I think it's still okay to feel like you have some discontent with your country because they're not serving us. They're not serving our interests. They're serving they're owned by the ruling class, and
their class interest. It's because
right, their class interest, which is why we have to fight for
we need to
our
change
class
the class character of our government. That's the problem.
Exactly. And that's it's I understand how cathartic it can be to be like, oh, I fucking hate this government, but like we got to take it back and make it something that we can actually be proud of. And I think I think we're seeing that happen in China right now. And I see a lot of people who just hate China and they just like hold on to the Soviet Union. And, I don't know what it was like to live with the Soviet Union. Okay. I can't miss it. I wish it were still around, but China is leading this fight right now. And I think it's racist to just ignore that, to be completely honest. Like, that's racism, because there's actual consequences to it. It's the same with Cuba. You bring up the sanctions, they're like, oh, their people are being starved and killed by their government. And I'm just like, no, well, actually, sanctions and warfare, class warfare, by the way, is what's killing these people. They want to better the lives of the people. And they still have like 80% home ownership in Cuba. I don't know anyone my age who owns a fucking house. Okay. So I'm really fucking poor now. I could be poor and own a house in Cuba. Communism? Why doesn't that what? How are these things not clicking for people? And it's racist imperialist propaganda.
Yeah. It's because these leaders and the populations of these countries that are rising to power and lifting themselves out of poverty and extreme poverty, they don't fit the mold of like the Anglo-Saxon, like archetype that so many Western leftists have come to like only accept. And a lot of it also stems from like, Western and American exceptionalism. You have like Western leftists who will look at other countries and be like, well, they're not really Marxists or they're not really communists because they have different cultural norms. And I think that is exclusionary. And I think that is this and that. And it's like, you can't just say that, oh, because of their cultural norms that they aren't, scoring real political victories for the left in their country. It's like they're doing far more for their working class, and their working class is doing far more for their country than anything the American left has done over the past 40 years. Like, what are you talking about? You have no room to talk. And really, it's quite like an exceptionalist worldview to say like, that culture is wrong. I don't like that. And for that reason, it doesn't count,
Well, they ignore, they're not looking at it through like a materialist perspective. They're ignoring the unique material conditions, which are different from ours and different from because you can't copy and paste socialism. It's all depends on the conditions. And socialism is going to look different in every country. That's what it's literally says that in the Communist Manifesto, which people haven't read clearly. So yeah, it's just people aren't really looking at that from a historical materialist and dialectical way.
And it's almost like they want people to be suffering in order for there to be like true equality. Like their version of the, you aren't suffering. Like that Esha woman on Twitter was like, I was like, yeah, well, Americans are suffering too. And she was like, but is your mom getting gang raped? And I was like,
God.
That was a leap.
That was what a stretch, right? Like, I don't normally name drop people, but I just think that was just like so out of left field. Like, I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. Like, why is it radical to say we're suffering here because I make $10 an hour? Like, what are super profits? You didn't read that shit. You didn't read. How did you read that? Like, stop living in 1917. It's 2021. It's 2021.
Yeah.
I don't think some of those things apply the way that like the material conditions have changed. It's been over 100 years. Things are different. We're living in a postmodern world, right? Like history ended, didn't it? Like things have changed? No, we're still living in feudal Russia. Like,
yeah,
am I crazy?
I think there's a lot of people that's a problem. It's like people who, and you see it like on like the shit lib left also. You see these people who like refuse to engage with workers, refuse to participate in like union organizing, refuse to have any sort of understanding of like what class consciousness is in the United States right now. And they sit on their Twitch streams, they sit on their YouTube streams, and that's all they do. And they think they have like a better pulse on these issues and a better pulse on what's going to actually bring about real change, or what real change even looks like, what a revolution would look like, than the people who are the ones who will inevitably make it happen.
Right. And speaking of like, rad lib shit brains, let's talk about AOC and her like liberal virtue signaling, like publicity stunt, tax the rich dress, where you saw like, I just saw countless like social dems like that watch like Hassan Piker, who think that they're like socialists because they want to tax the rich, when that really wouldn't do anything to benefit the material reality of workers here. Because again, like we've said like throughout this discussion, we don't have a people's government, we don't have a worker state. So even if we did that, it would just go, if we tax the rich, what makes you think that's going to go automatically to funding infrastructure, education, healthcare, or cleaning out these contaminated water and food supply that we have here, or like ending homelessness, which we can do right now with $20 billion. Exactly. But we're not doing that. It's just going to go back into the war machine. Yeah. But Jackson, what were your thoughts on that?
I think it's an effort, honestly. I mean, if you really think about it, she could have put anything on that dress. Why did she choose tax the rich? I would imagine, it's an effort to make the American social democrat currently think that like that is what socialism or democratic socialism, whatever the fuck she calls herself, that like that's what that is, and that's what socialism should look like. When we all know that doesn't change the inherent structure of our economy, that doesn't change the way in which like wealth is like gathered and flowing into the hands of the top 1%, 1/10 of 1%. It doesn't really dramatically change anything. And like you said too, it's like, well, if you don't change the makeup of our government and the way in which our government operates on a day-to-day basis, it's like, well, what's that money going to go to? It's going to go to the same projects that the people who are running the country are currently putting money to. They're just going to increase it, just because right. There's not necessarily an increase, threat of war. The imperialist class is manufacturing like the increased need of, defense, as they call it. So they increase the military budget every year, and they increase like police spending every year. So it's like, and security spending now is the big thing. Like I truly believe that fascism in the United States is gonna come in by the way of like some woke liberal identity security state apparatus, like, you know, policy package. Like I think we're already seeing that. You know, so the dress was just like ridiculous, and it's virtue signaling at its finest. And I did find it, the last thing I'll say about it for now is like, I did find it odd that there were so many people who were outraged by it that really haven't spoken out against AOC a lot in the past for the policies that she's pushed and the vote she's taken. It's like, I'm glad that people are like not digging it and they're pissed off at her, but where were you guys when AOC voted to give $3.5 billion to Israel, or increase the Capitol Police budget by like 2 times, or, you know, it was silent during the 2 bombings of Syria and Iraq that Joe Biden led? Like, where were you during all of that?
And the photo op she did with the coup plotters in Venezuela, like,
yeah. Support for sanctions and the coup government in Venezuela as well. It's like the list goes on and on and on, giving more government subsidies to private health insurance. Like it really doesn't end. It really doesn't end. And it's like, maybe this will change the views of leftists and, you know, create a more critical eye for a lot of them towards the squad and all these so-called progressives in the future. But we have yet to see.
I do like that the message, like there's discourse behind the actual message that I've seen, at least from my like circle of friends online and in real life, about what that means to tax the rich. And do I support that as a means to transitioning to a socialist system? Yeah, sure. You know, the rich in this country owe us a lot of fucking money. Pay off my student loan debt, buy me a house, like, let's redistribute that, right? But it's not going to mean anything if we don't own the means of production, if we don't have control over the government. Because, I mean, look what they did in the 80s. I mean, Reagan destroyed that social welfare system. And it was hardly a social welfare system. There was no guaranteed rights to housing. There was no regulations on rent. There was no universal health care. I mean, we've been talking about universal health care in this country for well over 100 years. It's too late for incrementalism. It's too late for tax the rich one step at a time. Like,
yeah,
it's where's the action? Like that's we're so far beyond the need for taxing the rich that we just need to make them absolutely terrified of us. Like, you could, like, if you want to contribute to society, great, give us back our money, give us back our surplus labor value.
Yeah.
And also just her whole shtick about, like, she also has like merch that says "Eat the Rich," and that's just like, it's such like an anti-Marxist. It's like that's like not what socialism is about. Like, socialism isn't about making people poor. It's about making society and the people that live within it rich. It's about abundance. It's about increasing productive capacity to its limits.
Yes.
All the way. It's not about degrowth. It's not about that. That's not what socialism is about. Like, and that's why when people like on the right, you know, who are more conservative, see that and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to be poor. I want to be rich. So you don't you want us to be poor. You want us to stay where we're at. And that's not what socialism is about, because she like calls herself a socialist and she's not, because that's not what socialism is about. And that's why it's really important for us to really like do these kind of discussions, but also like the importance of getting to the masses and really teaching them about what socialism is about. It's not about making you poor. It's not about like, you know, going back in time or like, you know, degrowth. It's about increasing productive capacities and making people rich. It's just in a different way. We're not going to exploit people aren't going to get rich off of exploiting people people were going to get rich by working together in cooperation.
And what I think is really interesting too is she's selling merch with Tax the Rich on it now. And she's like, this was made with union labor. And it's like, okay, but you've made this like a brand. Like this was a branding moment for you. Mm-hmm. What about the thousands of Haitian people under a bridge that you have? Has she said anything about that? Or what? I haven't seen anything. I could be wrong. She could have said something, but she sure got a photo op. And she was like wearing this like $5,000 watch too. Like I remember one of my more conservative leaning friends was telling me about that, and I was like, "You're kind of nitpicking this, aren't you? Like why are we talking about this? Like this is really horrible what she's looking at." But it really was like it was a photo op for her, and I mean she's no worse than Nancy Pelosi.
When she was, you're saying when she was down in Texas with the yeah. So that was interesting because that was like right after she won her election.
Right.
And it was right after she fired Zainab Day, who was her like PR communications director, who was at Brand New Congress and now is with the People's Party and like just despises everything that the Justice Democrats have become. And Zainab Day, I talked to her about that and she's like, oh my God. She's like, that was the biggest train wreck on the planet. Like, she's like, I never would have recommended anything like that. But like, that's like the ideology and the thought process behind these people who are for reforming the Democratic Party and think that there's some sort of potential for that. They're all about like these cheap political points and this political theater and stuff like that. And with regard to the issue of the 10,000 Haitians that are, potentially going to, it's already happening, but potentially all be deported in an effort not to like stop any, supposed crime or like anything like that. There's no real threat to the United States that is even being, alleged by the Biden administration. They're literally out here just saying that we're going to deport these 10,000 Haitians in an effort to deter migration. Like that's their explicit statement. So she apparently, I heard she may have retweeted someone else who was tweeting about the deportations, but she won't tweet about it herself. And
right.
She does this about issues that are like a little bit more, a little bit more sensitive. And then there's some issues that she won't even talk about at all, like Syria. But yeah, I mean, she also isn't talking about the fact that Joe Biden, as of today, has deported 690,000 individuals, which is far more than Trump had deported at this time in his presidency. So it's like, it's good to ask like, where is she? Where's the squad right now? But it's like, it's even more important to like keep digging and be like, where the fuck are they on all of these issues, right. On all of these issues. There's so many issues that they don't not only engage with like entirely, or they don't push back through in the halls of Congress, but like they just don't even talk about.
Right. And I want to support them. I want to they say they're a socialist. They believe we should have healthcare. They believe no one should,
well, not really anymore. They don't.
Like when you like scratch.
No, they don't.
Do they believe those things?
No, they don't.
No.
They don't really believe those things. That they say these things to get elected, and they just want to further their career, and this is what we're seeing. They want to be just like the establishment. Like the goal of them is to like pull in all the like revolutionary like energy and then kill it.
Yeah. I think another interesting point with that is like, you can look at AOC's website. If you use the Wayback Machine, you can see when she was running, one of her big campaign priorities. She had like 3. It was Medicare for all. I'm forgetting the second one. It was probably like, I don't even know if it was like a climate action back then. There was another one, and then the third one was abolish ICE.
Yeah.
So you have like those 3. It may have been like cancel student loan debt or free public college or something. That was the other one, but abolish ICE. And then she gets elected. she has abolished ICE on her website, you know, never introduces policies for it or anything like that. And then somewhere along the line, I think it was last January, she takes abolish ICE off of her website. She still sells the abolish ICE hats, but she takes it off her website and turns what was a massive piece on her immigration page into like a small one-line bullet point on the women's issues section of her website. And it's like, it's the little things like that that most people are never gonna even notice, and one could even argue are nitpicky. But it's like, if you actually think about it, it's like, what are the discussions of the people behind the scenes within all of these progressive organizations that are pushing policies, her team, her PR team, the PR teams of these other Justice Democrats, if they're all collectively talking and agreeing that this shouldn't be a thing that they are putting out there on their websites, when that was the thing that they campaigned on, like most openly. So yeah, they've definitely changed. They're shepherding people into the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is the graveyard of progressives.
And it's obvious that they're trying to just turn activism into like a boutique like vibe, like just wear something and tweet it out, and like that's, you're an activist, and like you're like changing, you're changing, like, I don't know. It's just like, that's not what they're trying to like literally kill the main thing that we can use against the ruling elite in order to like make make these demands actually come into like fruition, into like, legislative, like, actual like legislation. She's like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kill that and make it into this like toothless, like virtual signal, like vibe thing, and make it like it all just tweet it out, or like wear a shirt, or like, and that's what activism is, and that's not it.
Yeah, activism is not going viral. It's not like tweeting, trying to convince Americans they aren't poor. Like,
yeah,
what'd you say?
Or yeah, like doing like a TikTok or something. I don't know.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry, there was like a little bit of a lag, I think, but yeah, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Like I've been saying this for a while. Like, we've got to abandon whatever like the Democrats are, but even more so, we got to stop making new parties, and I think we just all need to join the Communist Party. Like, it's been here for over 100 years, and a People's Party, like look how quickly the Justice Democrats have like fallen apart. The DSA, like I want to support these grassroots efforts, and I'm not gonna like belittle anyone who's part of them. I think what they're doing is good work, and I know a lot of people who do that. And even some of them get frustrated with it, and they move on. And it's like shopping for an employer almost. Like, you go from one NGO to the next NGO to this third party to that third party, and
yeah, I think that there's good people in CPUSA who have like great intentions.
Absolutely.
And I think there's good people in like just about any like leftist third party. Like, there's great people in the Green
Absolutely.
Party. There's great people in People's Party. And I think that I don't know. There's like plenty of like strategic disagreements I have with the CPUSA as of right now, and they're changing some of those things. It seems like they have some people that are guiding them in a little bit of a different way, like away from the ultras, which I think is great.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
I've noticed that too. That too. Yeah.
Did you notice they took out
they
occupied indigenous land from their bio?
Yes, thank God.
Yeah. I mean, it's just little things like that, but it makes a big deal when you're talking about like speaking to this country, the entire country, which is like the goal of the organization, right? But yeah, I've been, growing an interest of the Communist Party for sure.
Yeah.
that's been my struggle with these. There's like, honestly, there's too many options. Like, they really just need to coalesce into one mass movement. And I'm leaving the country soon to study for grad school, so like I can't put my eggs in that basket right now. But my advice to anyone who gives a shit, who's gotten this far into this episode, is you can be part of the DSA and the Communist Party. You can be part of the People's Party and the Communist Party. You can be part of the Green Party. I mean, maybe you can't be part of the Green Party and the Communist Party, but like, you get what I'm saying, right? Like there's a lot of things you can do. Like, sure, maybe in rural Texas, it's going to be hard for you to be a communist there, but you can still join, and you can still go with like as progressive as you can make it, right? Like, that's still possible. You can still push the envelope in your community. And sitting on Twitter and telling people they aren't poor and they aren't suffering enough for you to give a shit about them, Esha, is not gonna fucking work. I'm sorry. That's not realistic. Like, that's really offensive. And I highly doubt you're watching this, but seriously, I really expect an apology for that. That was really fucking horrible of you to say.
Those people are just ultra imperialist shit puppets.
For real.
I think a lot of people also like kind of go through those sorts of like phases, and can like recognize their wrongs. And like a lot of people like go through like an ultra phase as well. I feel like I didn't really have too much of that. Like, I really didn't. I kind of just went from like shit lib to like social democrat to like where I'm at now. But like, it's okay to recognize that you were in the, I mean, like, obviously I've had like shit takes, but it's okay to recognize that and like come around to like the right takes, and the right, like what it really does mean to be a communist and a patriot and all that stuff,
Right. And as long as you are like, unlearning, your past mistakes and making your corrections, that just shows that you're growing and you're,
as long as you're unlearning your settler colonialism, I will support your right to food. But you have to put occupied indigenous land in your Twitter bio.
God.
And I have to see every take you've ever made about imperialist policy in order for me to believe that you understand that people in the global south are poor.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'm a socialist.
No. We have to see how your proximity to whiteness, and then we have to measure it that way.
True. I have to first, in order for me to give a shit about you, you have to admit you're a white supremacist. Got you. Got you. You ain't ever gonna do that.
Yeah, that really is the mindset of so many of them, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, and it's funny too when people they look at streams like this, or they look at streams like when I talk about it with Caleb, and you guys talk with Caleb, and it's like, see, it's just white people, and it's like, well, A, that doesn't fucking matter, but B, it's like, it's not just white people. You're just selecting the white people to look at. You know, there's plenty of people of all backgrounds who truly do believe and understand what these things mean, but it's being weaponized. Identity is being weaponized. It's a purely American thing that comes from Ivy League institutions, all these fucking shit libs that are promoting this like weaponization of identity politics, and it's unfortunately taking root in the it's very much taken root in the American left. It's taking root in like other leftist movements in other countries now, and it comes from here. Like, this is not inherent to like German leftist ideology or anything like that, but it is taking root in these countries, and it's very disappointing to see that.
It's petty bourgeois radicalism. It's
absolutely,
and that's where they learn it from, is from these like Ivy League universities. And it's something that we really need to combat. But I think we're winning. I think actual Marxism is actually starting to win.
I think so too.
I'm seeing like less and less of these takes, and they're easily just dismantled. And
So easy.
it's just it's not as prevalent as I used to see it. So I think more people are actually starting to come around to our argument, because it's actually it's rational, it's dialectical.
Maybe those people blocked us. I mean,
Or
maybe
they've
we're not seeing it
changed.
because they've all like blocked
Yeah.
us.
I can't help but look at the rise of channels like, and this is just purely online left, but I think it carries over to the real world. I can't help but look at the rise of channels and popularity of channels like you guys, myself, Haas of Infrared, Jimmy Dore for that matter, like people like that.
Midwestern Marks. Midwestern Marxist.
I love all their stuff most of their stuff that they put out, and it's like you are seeing this rise of that, and then you're seeing figures like the bread tubers, for example, like flail into oblivion.
Yeah.
And people are starting to stop watching them, and their view counts are going down, and like you can't just ignore that. I think this without a doubt is like an information battle, and we're winning it.
Right. Exactly. And I think this is a good place to leave it, Jackson.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say? Any last thoughts?
I don't have a lot of last thoughts or anything to say, but thank you for having me on. I always love coming on. So
We love having you.
Two great minds, and yeah, keep up the great work.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Do we know each other well enough for me to call you Dad on the podcast?
which is weird, because he's like, you know,
shut up. If he's talking to me, he's
older than us, which is really weird. But yeah, thank you so much. You're always welcome on the show, and keep up the
always
work that you
always.
do.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Jackson.